Amaka was a bright and lively student at the University of Port Harcourt. At 21 years old, she was full of dreams and ambitions. Her friends admired her confidence, and her family cherished her warmth and kindness. She was the type of girl who could light up a room with her laughter. Growing up in a loving family, Amaka had always been taught to be careful in life, especially when it came to matters of the heart. As she navigated through university life, she balanced her studies, friendships, and family bonds. Her sister, Chidinma, was particularly close to her. They shared everything from clothes to secrets. But like many young people her age, Amaka was also drawn to the digital world and spent a lot of time on social media. She enjoyed chatting with her friends on Facebook, sharing pictures, and meeting new people online. One evening, as she sat in her hostel, scrolling through Facebook, a message from a stranger popped up. His name was Tunde. His profile picture showed a handsome young man with a charming smile. And his introduction message was casual and friendly. "Hey beautiful, you have an amazing smile," the message read. Amaka blushed slightly. She wasn't one of those to respond to strangers online, but something about his message seemed different. After a moment of hesitation, she replied with a simple "thank you." From that day on, they began chatting regularly. Tunde was attentive and sweet, always asking about her day, her studies, and her family. He claimed to be from Ibadan and worked as a business consultant. As the weeks went by, Amaka found herself drawn to him. His messages made her feel special, appreciated, and understood in a way that few people in her life did. They exchanged phone numbers, and their chats moved from Facebook to long phone calls that lasted late into the night. Tunde was funny, caring, and seemed genuinely interested in her life. For Amaka, it felt like she had found someone who could be the one. Her friends and sister, however, were skeptical. Chidinma often warned her to be careful, reminding her of the dangers of meeting strangers online. "Amaka, you don't know this guy," Chidinma would say. "Anyone can pretend to be nice over the phone. Just be careful, please." Her roommates echoed the same sentiments, but Amaka dismissed their concerns. She trusted Tunde. After all, he had been nothing but sweet and caring towards her. When Tunde eventually invited her to visit him in Ibadan, Amaka didn't hesitate to accept. It was an opportunity to finally meet the man who had captured her heart. Despite her sister's warnings, Amaka packed her bags for the journey. Excitement bubbling inside her. "I'll be fine," she assured Chidinma with a smile. "Tunde is a good person. You'll see, we'll be back with great news." Chidinma, still uneasy, could do nothing but pray for her sister's safety. Amaka woke up early on the day of her journey. It was a bright and warm morning in Port Harcourt, and her excitement was palpable. She had told her friends that she was going to meet Tunde, but she left out the part about him living in Ibadan. She knew they would only try to stop her, and she didn't want anything to ruin her happiness that day. Dressed in her favorite jeans and a simple top, she grabbed her small suitcase filled with a few clothes, makeup, and essentials. She looked at herself in the mirror one last time before leaving her hostel, imagining the look on Tunde's face when he finally saw her in person. This is going to be the start of something new and beautiful, she said to herself. Her journey was long. The bus ride from Port Harcourt to Ibadan took hours, and as the vehicle bumped along the dusty roads, Amaka's excitement mingled with a touch of nervousness. She held onto her phone, sending messages to Tunde every now and then to update him on her progress. "I can't wait to see you," he replied each time, followed by heart emojis that made her heart flutter. Eventually, the bus pulled into the chaotic motor park in Ibadan. Amaka stepped out, stretching her legs and taking in the new surroundings. The air was different here. The hustle and bustle of the city more intense than what she was used to. She quickly spotted Tunde standing by a corner, waving at her with a broad smile on his face. Amaka's heart skipped a bit as she approached him. He was just as handsome as his pictures, maybe even more so in real life. Tunde greeted her warmly, pulling her into a tight hug that made her blush. "I'm so glad you're finally here," he said, his voice smooth and reassuring. "You must be so tired. Let's get into my place so you can rest." They took a taxi to his apartment. Along the way, Amaka chatted excitedly, telling him about her journey. But Tunde was quieter than he had been on the phone. She didn't notice at first, too engrossed in her own excitement. But when they arrived at his apartment, a small one-bedroom flat tucked away in a nondescript building, a slight unease settled in her stomach. The place was modest, to say the least. It was sparsely furnished, with a bed, a small table, and a few chairs. There were no signs of warmth or comfort, no pictures or decorations to suggest that this was a welcoming home. Amaka shrugged off the unease that she was feeling. After all, she hadn't come here to judge his living conditions. She just wanted to see him. "You must be thirsty," Tunde said suddenly, walking into the tiny kitchen. "Let me get you something to drink." Amaka nodded, feeling parched from the long journey. She watched as he poured a drink into her cup and brought it over to her. Without thinking much of it, she took the cup and drank it down in one gulp. The liquid was sweet, almost too sweet, but she didn't care. She was just happy to finally be with Tunde. But within some minutes, she felt strange. Her head grew heavy, her vision blurred, and her limbs felt weak. She tried to speak, to say something, but her tongue felt thick and unresponsive. Panic surged through her, but she couldn't move. Tunde watched her with a sinister smile on his face as she slumped onto the bed, her consciousness slipping away. Amaka awoke to darkness. Her head ached and she felt disoriented. As she struggled to move, she realized with horror that her hands and feet were tied together. She was tied to a chair and her mouth was gagged. Fear shot through her like a bolt of electricity. She tried to scream, to call for help, but the gag muffled her cries. Moments later, a light came on, and Tunde's face appeared before her. His expression had gone and changed. Gone was the charming smile, the gentle eyes. Instead, he looked at her with cold amusement. So you really thought you were coming to meet your Prince Charming, didn't you? He sneered, circling around her like a predator stalking its prey. You girls are so easy to deceive. Amaka's heart pounded in her chest. Tears filled her eyes as she looked at him, silently pleading for mercy. Tunde bent down to look at her face, his eyes dark and calculating. You're not the first girl I've brought here, and you won't be the last, he whispered, his voice sending chills down her spine. But you fell so easily, chatting with a stranger online, traveling all the way to a city you don't know. Stupid girl. Amaka struggled against her restraints, fear surging through her veins. She wanted to escape, to run as far away from this place as possible, but she was helpless. Tunde pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Yes, I've got the merchandise, he said into the phone, his eyes never leaving hers. She'll do nicely. Yes, the body parts are fresh. Amaka's stomach churned with terror. She realized with sickening clarity what he was planning to do. This wasn't love. This was a trap, and she had walked right into it. Her mind raced as she tried to think of a way out, but her body was weak, her spirit crushed by the horror of her situation. Tunde hung up the phone and turned to face her. Don't worry, he said mockingly. You won't even feel a thing when it happens. It will be over soon. He walked out of the door, leaving Amaka alone in the darkness, her heart pounding with fear and regret. How had she been so foolish? Why hadn't she listened to her sister, her friends? She thought of her family, of her sister Chidima's worried face, and a sob rose in her throat. Would she ever see them again? Back in Port Harcourt, Chidima and Amaka's friends were growing increasingly worried. It had been days since they had heard from her. She had promised to call once she arrived in Ibadan, but there was nothing. No calls, no messages. Chidima's anxiety turned into dread as the hours passed. Something is wrong, Chidima said, pacing up and down their living room. This isn't like her. She should have called by now. Her parents, who Chidima later told everything, were equally worried. They contacted the authorities, but there was little they could do with so little information. Amaka had left without telling them exactly where she was going, and the only lead they had was Tunde's name, a name that could belong to any Tunde. Desperate, Chidinma took to social media, posting on every platform, begging for information. She called Amaka's friends, urging them to spread the word, to help find her sister. The more time that passed, the heavier the silence grew, and the more hopeless their situation felt. Days turned into weeks, and they received a call that shattered their world. The police in Ibadan had found a body. It was Amaka. She had been brutally murdered, her body dismembered and discarded like refuse. Tunde was nowhere to be found. He had vanished, leaving no trace behind. Chidinma screamed when she heard the news, her world crumbling around her. Their beautiful, kind and loving Amaka was gone, taken by the hands of a monster who had preyed on her trust and innocence. Her parents wept, their hearts breaking with grief and anger. The news of Amaka's tragic death spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the university and the entire community. It was a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers that lurked in the digital world. Students gathered to mourn her, lighting candles and holding night vigils, their hearts heavy with the loss of one of their own. In the end, Tunde was never found. The authorities believed he was part of a larger network of criminals involved in human trafficking and organ harvesting. But he had disappeared without a trace. The case remained unsolved, a dark shadow hanging over those who knew and loved Amaka. As for Amaka's family, they struggled to move on, carrying the weight of their loss. The vibrant young woman who they all loved was gone, and the dreams she had were lost with her. But through their pain, they found a purpose: to raise awareness, to educate people about the dangers of online interactions, and to ensure that no other family would ever have to endure the same tragedy.